In today's world, we're constantly bombarded with the message that we need to prove ourselves. Social media has trained us to seek validation through likes, comments, and the approval of others. We've been conditioned to believe that our voice needs to be the loudest in the room to be heard. But what if I told you that true power lies in the exact opposite direction? Have you ever found yourself desperately trying to explain your worth to someone who simply refuses to understand? That painful, a moment when you're pouring your heart out through paragraphs of text, hoping they'll finally see your value, all while feeling your power drain away with each word you type. The ancient Stoics understood something that most of us have forgotten in this noisy digital age. Silence isn't weakness. It's strength in its purest form. As Neville Goddard brilliantly taught, your self-concept is more powerful than any external validation you could ever receive. This wisdom has never been more relevant than it is today. Has this ever happened to you? Someone misunderstands your intentions and suddenly you find yourself frantically explaining, justifying, and even begging for them to see the real you? In that moment, you're unknowingly handing over your power, piece by piece, word by word. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. What you're about to discover in this video might completely transform how you interact with others, especially those who have hurt or rejected you. When most people feel wounded by others, they instinctively react, they chase, they explain, they try desperately to fix the situation. But this reactionary behavior only reveals one thing: insecurity. Neville Goddard emphasized a profound truth. Your imagination creates your reality, not your explanations to others. The Stoic understands that when someone has already decided not to understand you, no amount of explaining will change their mind. In fact, each attempt to justify yourself only reinforces their power over your emotional state. Stay with me until the end of this video, because I'll be revealing the 6 profound truths about silence that the ancient Stoics mastered. Principles that can transform your relationships and reclaim the power you've been giving away. These aren't just philosophical concepts. They're practical tools that you can implement immediately in your life. Imagine walking away from disrespect without saying a word. Not from pride or anger, but from a place of such deep self-respect that you no longer feel the need to convince others of your worth. Picture the freedom of no longer being controlled by others' opinions or judgments. This isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming clear and centered. The truth is, when you stop explaining yourself to those who've already made up their minds about you, something magical happens. The power dynamic shifts. Your silence becomes more powerful than any words you could possibly speak, and that's just the beginning of what we're about to explore. If you found value in this Stoic wisdom about the power of silence, hit that subscribe button now to join our community of warriors mastering inner strength through ancient philosophy. Think about it. Every time you find yourself crafting that long paragraph text, desperately trying to explain yourself to someone who's already made up their mind about you, you're not just wasting energy. You're literally transferring your power to them. This hidden truth lies at the core of Stoic philosophy. Ancient masters like Marcus Aurelius didn't just practice silence as a virtue. They recognized it as the foundation of personal sovereignty. The transformative journey begins with understanding what Neville Goddard so eloquently taught. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you become. When you're begging for attention or desperately explaining yourself, what energy are you actually projecting into the universe? One of lack, one of neediness, one that affirms you don't already possess what you're seeking. This mindset shift alone can revolutionize how you interact with those who've hurt or misunderstood you. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, framed this brilliantly when he said, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." Let that sink in for a moment. When you chase someone's attention or beg for their understanding, you're essentially saying, "My peace depends on how you respond to me." But that's not peace at all, that's prison. You've handed the keys to your emotional well-being to someone else, someone who may not even value it. The profound impact of this realization can't be overstated. Your awareness, as Goddard taught, is the only reality you truly experience. Everything else, others' opinions, their validation, their understanding, exists outside your sphere of influence. When you place such tremendous value on these external factors, you surrender the very power that makes you who you are. Behind the scenes of every interaction where you feel compelled to explain yourself lies a fundamental choice. Will you maintain your center of gravity within yourself, or will you place it in the hands of someone else? The Stoic chooses the former, not from pride or indifference, but from a deep understanding that true strength comes from within. This isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling. It's about making conscious decisions about where your energy flows. It's about recognizing that silence isn't just the absence of words. It's the presence of dignity. When someone disrespects you and you walk away without a word, you're not running from conflict. You're refusing to diminish yourself by engaging with what doesn't serve your highest good. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what happens when you truly embrace the power of silence. What unfolds when you stop chasing, when you cease explaining, when you no longer feel compelled to justify your existence to those who haven't earned that privilege. The revelations might surprise you, as they contradict much of what modern society has conditioned us to believe about communication and relationships. If this resonates with you at all, write in the comments, "Silence is my power." Let's see how many of us are awakening to this ancient wisdom. The true blueprint of inner strength reveals itself in those pivotal moments when someone disrespects you, and instead of launching into defense mode, you simply walk away without saying a word. This isn't about running from conflict. It's about recognizing which battles deserve your energy. What most people mistake for weakness in these moments is actually the highest form of personal power. This silence isn't emptiness or avoidance. It's the embodiment of discipline and self-respect. It's the conscious decision to value your inner peace over the temporary satisfaction of reaction. The transformation happens internally first, as your mindset shifts from "I need to defend myself" to "I need to protect my peace." This subtle but profound shift changes everything about how others experience you. As Neville Goddard brilliantly articulated, your state of consciousness determines your reality. When you maintain silent dignity in the face of disrespect, you're making a powerful declaration about your self-concept. You're saying, without uttering a single word, "I know my worth so completely that your opinion cannot diminish it." This unwavering self-knowledge speaks volumes more than any verbal defense ever could. What's fascinating is the ripple effect this creates in your relationships. When you consistently respond to provocation with composed silence, people begin to wonder what changed. They expected the old pattern, your defensive explanation, your emotional reaction, your need to be understood. But now they encounter something entirely different, a centered, grounded presence that refuses to be baited into old dynamics. The hidden truth that most never discover is that when you don't react, others lose their perceived control over you. Think about it. What power does someone have over you if they can no longer predict or manipulate your responses? What happens when your triggers no longer trigger you? The entire relationship dynamic undergoes a fundamental restructuring. Behind the scenes of this journey towards stoic silence lies an alchemical process. You're not just changing your behavior, you're rewiring your very consciousness. Goddard explained that consciousness is the only reality, meaning that your composed silence isn't just a strategy, but a revelation of your evolved inner state. This confounds those who seek to provoke you because they're encountering a version of you they don't recognize and can't manipulate. The impact extends far beyond individual interactions. As you consistently practice this discipline of silence, you'll notice people treating you differently across all areas of life. Not because you've demanded respect verbally, but because you've commanded it energetically. Your presence alone communicates boundaries without needing to announce them. Let's explore the psychological aspects of what happens when someone expects your reaction, but encounters your silence instead. This creates what psychologists call pattern interruption, a powerful moment where habitual dynamics break down and new possibilities emerge. In this space of interrupted patterns, both you and the other person have an opportunity for profound realignment. If you've ever experienced the liberating power of walking away from drama without a word, drop "I choose dignity" in the comments. I'm curious how many of us have discovered this quiet superpower. Many of us have found ourselves caught in that exhausting cycle of overgiving, pouring our energy into relationships where we constantly feel misunderstood or undervalued. The pattern becomes painfully familiar. Someone walks away and we chase. They misinterpret our intentions and we launch into lengthy explanations. They question our worth and we desperately try to prove it. This cycle doesn't just drain you, it fundamentally alters how you're perceived and how you perceive yourself. But there's a profound revelation waiting for you on the other side of this pattern. Silence offers not just a temporary respite, but a complete paradigm shift in how you engage with the world. If you've ever found yourself chasing someone who has clearly walked away from you, this moment right now could mark the beginning of your personal revolution. This isn't just about changing a behavior. It's about embarking on a journey of consciousness transformation. Neville Goddard taught something that many still struggle to fully grasp. A changed consciousness must inevitably produce a changed reality. When you shift from explanation and pursuit to dignified silence, you're not just trying a new communication technique, you're fundamentally altering the vibrational frequency you broadcast to the world. Your decision to embrace silence creates a new pattern that ripples through every relationship in your life. This is why the simple affirmation, "My silence is my power," carries such transformative potential. Behind these 5 words lies a complete philosophy of self-sovereignty. When you truly internalize this statement, not just intellectually understanding it, but emotionally embodying it, you begin to experience a profound mindset recalibration. Suddenly, the urge to defend, explain, and justify yourself diminishes because you recognize those behaviors as coming from a place of perceived powerlessness. Goddard emphasized how affirmations reshape our consciousness from the inside out. When you declare silence as your power, you're not just adopting a temporary strategy, you're establishing an entirely new way of engaging with challenging people and situations. You're creating a decision framework that automatically asks, does this situation deserve my energy, my words, my attention? And often, the answer will be a liberating no. What's fascinating is watching how this silent strength impacts those around you. People who previously felt entitled to explanations suddenly find themselves confronting a new version of you, one whose worth isn't up for debate, whose boundaries aren't negotiable, whose peace isn't easily disturbed. This shift creates a domino effect of recalibrated relationships as others must now meet you at your level of self-respect. The hidden truth is that your silence doesn't just protect your energy, it reveals others' intentions with crystal clarity. When you stop filling the space with words, you can finally see the reality of each relationship without the fog of your own explanations obscuring the view. This clarity becomes the foundation for healthier connections moving forward. Let's explore how this principle applies in those moments when someone attempts to pull you into unnecessary drama or conflict. The real battlefield isn't external, it's internal. It's that moment of choice where you decide whether to engage or to stand firm in your powerful silence. If you're ready to reclaim your energy through the practice of strategic silence, type "reclaiming my power" in the comments. I'd love to know who's joining this inner revolution. There's a fascinating paradox at work when you embrace the power of silence, something that goes against everything our reaction-driven culture teaches us. When you stop filling the space with explanations and defenses, people don't just hear your absence of words, they feel your absence of need. This creates a magnetic effect that's completely counterintuitive to most people's understanding of influence and connection. Think about it. Silence doesn't push people away. It mysteriously pulls them toward you. This gravitational shift happens because your silence creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. When you refuse to fill the space with desperate explanations or emotional pleas, others often feel compelled to step into that space. Your dignified silence speaks volumes about your self-worth without uttering a single word. Subscribe now to continue your journey into stoic mastery. Each video provides powerful insights to help you reclaim your peace, strengthen your boundaries, and live with unshakable dignity. This principle reflects one of Neville Goddard's most powerful teachings, that imagination creates reality. When you imagine yourself as someone who doesn't need to chase validation or explain your worth, you begin to embody that reality. Your consciousness shifts from seeking to sourcing, from pursuing to attracting. The vacuum created by your silence becomes a powerful invitation for others to experience you on entirely new terms. Now let's address what happens in those triggering moments when you feel hurt, rejected, or misunderstood. Your instincts scream at you to fight back, to defend yourself, to make them understand. The impulse feels almost primal. Surely if you explain yourself clearly enough, they'll finally get it right. But here's the revelation that transforms relationships. The more you talk, the less they listen. The more you chase, the more they run. This psychological principle plays out in countless interactions. When you pursue someone who's pulling away, you inadvertently reinforce the dynamic you're trying to change. Goddard explained this through a simple but profound truth. What you resist persists. Every time you resist someone's misunderstanding by trying to correct it, you actually strengthen that misunderstanding in your reality. You give it energy, attention, and power. The breakthrough comes when you realize that silence stops feeding this resistance. It creates a clean slate, a reset button for the entire dynamic. When you stop chasing, explaining, and defending, you create space for entirely new patterns to emerge. This space becomes the birthplace of authentic connection. Not the kind you have to beg for, but the kind that naturally aligns with your level of self-worth. Behind the scenes of this transformation lies a fundamental shift in how you perceive your own value. When you no longer feel compelled to convince others of your worth, you demonstrate unshakable confidence in that worth. This creates a ripple effect that recalibrates how people respond to you across all areas of life. Let's examine what happens energetically when you choose silence over explanation in those moments when you feel most misunderstood. There's an immediate reclamation of power, a redirection of your life force back to yourself rather than pouring it into someone who may not value it. If you've noticed how your explanations often fall on deaf ears while your silence commands attention, drop "silence speaks louder" in the comments. I'm fascinated to see who's experienced this paradox firsthand. There's profound wisdom in Elbert Hubbard's observation that he who does not understand your silence will probably not understand your words. This insight reveals a fundamental truth about human connection that most people miss entirely. When someone has already decided not to understand you, no amount of explanation will bridge that gap. Your silence simply makes visible what was already there, their unwillingness to truly see you. What's particularly fascinating is how silence creates discomfort in ways that noise never can. Think about it. When someone expects your reaction, your defense, your explanation, and instead encounters only silence, it creates a psychological tension that's almost impossible to ignore. This discomfort isn't accidental. It's a natural consequence of disrupting the expected pattern. Your silence becomes a catalyst for transformation, not just in you, but in the entire dynamic. Neville Goddard taught that consciousness precedes all manifestation. This principle operates powerfully when you embrace silence as your response to provocation or misunderstanding. Your silent confidence doesn't just protect your energy. It actually manifests a new reality where others must confront their own actions without the cushion of your explanations. When you refuse to provide excuses for their behavior or justifications for yours, you create a clear space where truth can finally emerge unobscured. The hidden truth behind stoic silence is that it holds up a mirror, reflecting people's behavior back to them with crystal clarity. When someone disrespects you and you respond with lengthy explanations or emotional reactions, you inadvertently provide them with distractions from their own actions. Your words become the focus rather than their behavior. But when you respond with dignified silence, they're left face to face with the unfiltered reality of how they treated you. This mirroring effect doesn't come from ego or pride or manipulation. It comes from a place of deep self-respect and emotional maturity. It's the natural outcome of someone who values their peace more than they value being right or understood. The impact of this mindset shift extends far beyond individual interactions. It fundamentally alters your entire relationship landscape. Goddard emphasized the power of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled as a manifestation principle. When you maintain silence in the face of disrespect or misunderstanding, you're essentially assuming the state of someone who already knows their worth without needing external validation. Your silence says, "I am so secure in who I am that I don't need to convince you of my value." This inner certainty radiates outward and begins reshaping how others experience you. Behind the scenes of this internal shift is a profound decision, the choice to stop participating in dynamics that diminish you. When you refuse to chase approval, explain your worth, or defend your boundaries, you establish a new energetic blueprint for all your relationships. People begin responding not just to your words, but to the unshakable certainty you embody. Let's explore what happens when someone accustomed to provoking reactions from you suddenly encounters your composed silence. This journey into unfamiliar territory often triggers a revealing response, one that shows you exactly where you stand with them. If you've experienced how your silence reveals more truth than your words ever could, write "truth in silence" in the comments. I'm curious how many have witnessed this revelation in your own relationships. One of the most liberating revelations on this journey comes when you realize just how much energy you've been wasting trying to be understood by people who don't even understand themselves. Think about that for a moment. How many hours have you spent crafting the perfect response, rehearsing explanations, or losing sleep over someone who lacks the emotional capacity to truly see you? This awakening marks a pivotal turning point in your personal evolution. When you embrace silence, you reclaim not just your power, but your precious life force energy. You stop pouring yourself into empty vessels. You stop trying to build bridges to islands that don't want to be reached. You stop attempting to heal relationships with people who aren't committed to their own healing. This reclamation creates an immediate sense of relief, a weight lifted that you may not have even realized you were carrying. There's a profound truth that often gets overlooked in our connection-obsessed culture. Some wounds actually heal better in silence. Not every emotional injury needs to be processed through conversation, especially with the person who caused it. Neville Goddard taught that imagination is the reality that builds the bridge to your desires. When you direct this creative power inward instead of outward, you begin silently rebuilding your inner world without external interference or validation. The transformation happens on a cellular level. Your silent healing creates space for genuine self-connection, the kind that doesn't require witnesses or validation to be real. This internal realignment becomes the foundation for authentic relationships moving forward, as you're no longer building connections from a place of lack or need, but from wholeness. Now, here's where the journey gets particularly interesting. Your newfound silence will inevitably trigger and confuse those who've grown accustomed to controlling you through your reactions. When someone expects you to defend, explain, or justify yourself and instead encounters your dignified silence, it creates a psychological pattern interruption that often leads to revealing responses. The power dynamic undergoes a fundamental shift because your silence speaks one undeniable truth. You don't owe explanations. Not for your boundaries, not for your choices, not for your feelings. This revelation isn't about being cold or withholding. It's about honoring your energetic sovereignty. It's about recognizing that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. As Goddard explained, consciousness is your only reality. When you change your response pattern from reactive to composed, you literally change others' ability to manipulate you. Think about how many times someone has pushed your buttons specifically to get a reaction. When those buttons no longer work, when your triggers no longer trigger you, the entire foundation of a manipulative relationship crumbles. The inner alchemy that happens during this process transforms not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. You begin to embody a new level of emotional maturity, one that recognizes the difference between responding and reacting. Your decisions become more deliberate, your boundaries more clear, your presence more grounded. Let's explore what happens energetically when you stop participating in draining dynamics and instead hold space for your own peace. This silent revolution creates ripple effects that extend far beyond individual relationships. If you've felt the freedom that comes from no longer explaining yourself to those who aren't ready to understand, type "freedom in boundaries" in the comments. I'm curious who else has experienced this powerful shift. There's a profound paradox that emerges when you embrace silence in moments of emotional turbulence. You actually begin to hear truth louder than ever before. In our noisy, distraction-filled world, this revelation can spark a complete paradigm shift in how you process difficult experiences. When most people encounter distress, rejection, or conflict, their instinctive response is to seek external validation, calling friends for support, scrolling through social media for temporary relief, or confronting the person who hurt them. But the Stoic warrior takes a radically different approach. Instead of turning outward in these critical moments, they turn inward. This isn't isolation or emotional suppression. It's a deliberate journey into self-connection. The transformation happens when you recognize that external voices, no matter how well-intentioned, often drown out the most important voice of all, your own inner wisdom. Neville Goddard illuminated this truth when he taught that the answers you've been desperately seeking outside yourself are actually found within. The irony is that we can't hear these answers when we're constantly filling the space with noise, explanations, and external input. Silence creates the sacred container for your inner wisdom to finally emerge unobstructed. It's in this quiet space that clarity rises naturally to the surface. This brings us to a crucial misconception about Stoic silence, the idea that it represents emotional detachment or coldness. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Stoic goes silent, not from a lack of feeling, but precisely because they understand that real answers come from reflection, not reaction. They feel deeply, but they refuse to let those feelings dictate impulsive responses that they might later regret. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." This profound insight reveals that our suffering doesn't come from events themselves, but from the meaning we assign to them. When you embrace silence in difficult moments, you create space to examine these meanings before they solidify into your reality. Neville Goddard taught a parallel truth, that your consciousness determines your experience, not external events. When you respond to life's challenges from a reactive state, you reinforce the reality of those challenges. But when you respond from a place of centered silence, you access the power to reframe and reimagine those same experiences. This mindset revolution doesn't dismiss your feelings, it simply prevents them from hijacking your response. Behind the scenes of this internal process lies an opportunity for profound self-discovery. In the quietude that follows emotional triggers, you begin to hear the subtle distinctions between your authentic self and your conditioned reactions. You start to recognize patterns that have been invisible to you before, perhaps seeing how certain words or situations consistently activate old wounds that have nothing to do with the present moment. The journey toward embracing silence isn't always comfortable, but it's consistently revealing. It illuminates the difference between reacting from habit and responding from wisdom. It shows you where you've been giving your power away and offers a path to reclaim it. If you've discovered that your moments of silence have revealed truths that noise was hiding, share "Silence revealed my truth" in the comments. I'd love to know what insights have emerged from your quiet moments. When you create true silence, not just external quiet, but internal stillness, something remarkable begins to happen. Your mind, so often cluttered with reactions, defenses, and explanations, gradually calms itself. It's in this mental clearing that truth naturally rises to the surface, much like sediment settling in still water. This revelation doesn't arrive with fanfare or drama. It emerges gently, often surprising you with its clarity and simplicity. You start to hear deeper truths about your situation, truths that were always there but remained obscured by the noise of reactivity. Perhaps you realize, this relationship hasn't been serving me for years, or I've been seeking approval from someone who isn't capable of giving it, or my need to explain myself comes from childhood patterns, not present reality. These insights emerge not through force, but through allowing. Neville Goddard illuminated this process when he taught that when the mind quiets, the voice of intuition speaks clearly. This inner knowing has always been available to you, but it can't compete with the louder voices of reaction, justification, and external validation. The transformation happens when you create enough internal space for this wisdom to finally be heard. Silent reflection reveals what reactive emotion so effectively conceals: your authentic truth. One of the most powerful aspects of embracing silence during emotional turbulence is how it creates space to separate your immediate emotions from your deeper values. When you feel hurt, rejected, or misunderstood, your emotions scream for immediate action. To defend, to explain, to prove your worth. These emotional impulses feel urgent and compelling in the moment, but they rarely represent your highest self or deepest wisdom. In contrast, when you choose silence instead of reaction, something profound shifts. Your values begin to whisper wiser counsel, guidance that aligns with who you truly are, not just how you momentarily feel. You might hear gentle reminders like, "Your peace matters more than being right," or "Someone who values you wouldn't need this explanation," or "Your worth isn't determined by their understanding." These value-based insights offer a much more stable foundation for your responses than volatile emotions ever could. Goddard emphasized the importance of mental discipline in creating your desired reality. This discipline isn't about suppressing emotions or denying hurt. It's about refusing to let temporary feelings dictate permanent decisions. Silence cultivates this discipline naturally, creating a buffer zone between trigger and response where wisdom can intervene. It's in this space that you reclaim your power to choose rather than simply react. The inner alchemy that happens during this process is nothing short of extraordinary. Each time you choose silence over reactive explanation, you strengthen neural pathways associated with emotional regulation and self-trust. You literally rewire your brain to pause before reacting, to reflect before responding, to consider before concluding. This mental mastery becomes a cornerstone of personal sovereignty. Let's explore the profound distinction between reacting from emotional wounds and responding from centered awareness. This shift represents one of the most significant transformations on the path of personal growth, moving from externally triggered to internally guided. If you've noticed how silence helps you distinguish between what you're feeling in the moment and what truly matters to you, share values over emotions in the comments. I'm curious who else has experienced this clarifying power of silence. The ancient Stoics understood something that our modern world has largely forgotten: the immense power found in that sacred pause between trigger and response. While we're constantly bombarded with cultural messages encouraging immediate reaction, the Stoics embraced a profound stillness before engaging with provocation. This deliberate pause isn't hesitation or uncertainty, it's a demonstration of complete sovereignty over your impulses. In today's hyper-connected reality, we're conditioned to believe that immediate responses demonstrate strength, that quick comebacks show intelligence, that instant rebuttals prove our worth. Yet the hidden truth lies in the exact opposite direction. Respect isn't gained through volume or speed, but through the composed deliberation that silence provides. The person who can pause while everyone else reacts demonstrates a level of self-mastery that's both rare and compelling. As Neville Goddard taught, controlled imagination creates deliberate reality. When you refuse to be baited into reactive patterns, you're essentially exercising precise control over your mental landscape. Instead of allowing external provocations to dictate your internal state, you maintain sovereignty over your consciousness. This mental discipline doesn't just protect your peace in the moment, it fundamentally alters the reality you create moving forward. Your pause before responding, or choosing not to respond at all, demonstrates a level of emotional intelligence that's immediately recognizable, even if unconsciously, to everyone who encounters it. It signals that you operate from inner guidance rather than external triggers. This caliber of self-possession naturally commands respect without demanding it, a paradox that reveals the true nature of authentic power. Now here's where the journey takes a fascinating turn. The more silent you are, the more people reveal themselves through their actions. This revelation often comes as a surprise to those accustomed to over-explaining and chasing validation. When you stop filling the space with words, justifications, and emotional reactions, you create a clear field to observe what's actually happening beneath the surface. You no longer need to anxiously ask if someone cares about you. Their behavior will show you with crystal clarity. You don't need to wonder if they respect your boundaries. Their actions will reveal the truth. You don't need to question their intentions. Their responses to your silence will tell you everything you need to know. This insight transforms how you navigate all relationships, bringing a new level of discernment to your connections. Neville Goddard explained this through a profound concept. Everyone is you pushed out. Their response to your silence doesn't just reveal who they are, it reveals the current state of your relationship dynamic. When you shift from reactive to composed, from explaining to observing, from chasing to centering, you create the space for authentic patterns to emerge. Some connections will naturally strengthen in this clarity, while others will naturally fall away. Both outcomes serving your highest good. Behind the scenes of this transformation lies a fundamental shift in where you place your attention. Instead of focusing on crafting the perfect response or defense, you direct your awareness towards simply witnessing what unfolds when you choose not to engage in familiar patterns. This witnessing consciousness becomes an extraordinary tool for discovering which relationships nourish your growth and which ones deplete your energy. If you've been surprised by how clearly people show their true colors when you simply remain silent, share true colors revealed in the comments. I'm fascinated to hear about your experiences with this powerful revelation. There's a revealing distinction that becomes apparent when you observe how different people respond to conflict or challenge. Weak people, and I mean emotionally weak, not physically weak, tend to use noise to feel strong. They raise their voice, send lengthy explanatory texts, engage in public drama, or dominate conversations. All this external commotion serves as a temporary mask for their internal insecurity. It's the emotional equivalent of a small dog barking loudly to appear more threatening. In stark contrast, truly strong people harness the power of silence to maintain their strength. They don't feel compelled to announce their boundaries, they simply enforce them. They don't need to repeatedly assert their worth, they embody it. They don't seek external validation, they generate it from within. This fundamental difference reveals a profound truth about authentic power. It doesn't require constant expression to exist. In fact, the less you feel the need to prove your strength, the more genuine strength you likely possess. The ancient Stoics understood this paradox intuitively. Their practice wasn't about emotional suppression, but about internal sovereignty, the ability to choose your responses rather than being controlled by external circumstances. This mindset revolution places you in the driver's seat of your own life, transforming how you navigate everything from minor irritations to major betrayals. As Neville Goddard taught through his principle of consciousness, what you are aware of being, you become. When you maintain silent strength in challenging situations, you're not just adopting a strategy, you're embodying a state of being. You're essentially declaring to yourself and the universe, I am already complete, I am already worthy, I am already enough. This silent strength reflects a consciousness that's already secure in its power, not desperately seeking to prove it. Now, let's explore what happens in those particularly painful moments when someone undermines, betrays, or disrespects you. Your instinct likely screams for immediate vindication, to expose them, to defend yourself, to make them understand how wrong they were. But the masterful response takes an entirely different approach. In these critical moments, silence becomes both your shield and your weapon. Your quietness in the face of betrayal creates something remarkable. It forces the other person to confront the echo of their own actions without the distraction of your reaction. When you refuse to engage in the expected drama, when you don't provide the anticipated emotional response, you create a clear space where they must sit with what they've done. This mirror effect often creates more discomfort than any words could ever generate. Goddard emphasized this mirror principle when he taught that others reflect back what exists in your consciousness. When you maintain composed silence rather than reactive defense, you're projecting a consciousness of self-worth and boundary awareness. This inner clarity creates a clean, Mirror, allowing you to see relationships exactly as they are, not as you wish them to be or fear them to be. The journey toward embracing silence reveals a hidden truth about personal power. Sometimes the most impactful response is no response at all. This doesn't mean you never communicate. It means you choose when, how, and with whom to engage, based on what serves your highest good rather than what temporarily soothes your ego. Let's delve into the profound internal shift that happens when you stop using external noise to validate your worth and start trusting the quiet certainty of your own inherent value. This evolution represents one of the most significant transformations on the path of personal sovereignty. If you've experienced firsthand how your silence in difficult moments spoke volumes more than words ever could, share "Silence spoke louder" in the comments. I'm curious who else has witnessed this power at work. Marcus Aurelius offered us a profound insight when he wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" This observation cuts straight to the heart of why silence often serves us better than reaction. Think about the last time you responded to hurt with immediate anger or defensiveness. Did your reactive response actually heal the wound, or did it create an entirely new set of problems to navigate? The hidden truth most people miss is that reactive responses typically create far more pain than the original wound that triggered them. When someone hurts or disrespects you and you immediately fire back with angry words, lengthy explanations, or emotional outbursts, you're not just addressing the initial injury, you're creating ripple effects that can damage relationships, compromise your dignity, and drain your vital energy. This cascade of consequences often dwarfs whatever sparked your reaction in the first place. The Stoic wisdom lies in recognizing this pattern before you're caught in it. Neville Goddard illuminated this same principle through his teaching that what you focus on expands in your experience. When you focus on defending yourself against disrespect, you actually amplify the presence of disrespect in your consciousness. You give it energy, attention, and prime real estate in your mental landscape. Silence, by contrast, redirects your focus from conflict to peace, from external validation to internal sovereignty, from temporary reaction to lasting alignment. This mental redirection represents a fundamental shift in how you process challenging interactions. Instead of allowing someone else's behavior to dictate your emotional state, you maintain conscious choice about where you direct your precious life force energy. This mindset revolution transforms you from reactive participant to sovereign creator of your experience. Most people, when faced with disrespect or misunderstanding, instinctively rush to either defend or attack. They feel compelled to explain their side, correct misconceptions, or return the disrespect in kind. This reactivity feels justified and even necessary in the moment, but it almost always diminishes your presence and dilutes your power. The transformative alternative is embracing dignified silence, a response that maintains your standards without engaging in unnecessary drama. The brilliance of this approach lies in its elegant simplicity. You don't argue with disrespect, you simply distance yourself from it. Not with dramatic announcements or emotional intensity, but with quiet certainty about what you will and won't accept in your life. This boundary isn't harsh or rigid, it's simply clear. And clarity, when consistently maintained, commands respect without demanding it. Goddard explained this principle through his teaching that you inevitably attract your state of consciousness into your experience. When you maintain silent dignity in the face of provocation, you're emanating a consciousness of self-respect and personal sovereignty. This vibration naturally attracts respectful treatment while repelling those who aren't aligned with your level of consciousness. Behind the scenes of this internal shift is a profound realization. Your peace is too valuable to be disturbed by every provocation that comes your way. Not everything deserves your energy, your words, or your reaction. Some situations call for engagement, while others are best met with composed silence. Let's explore the psychological dimensions of what happens when you choose silence over reactivity in those triggering moments when someone crosses your boundaries or questions your worth. This internal journey reveals aspects of your own power you may have never fully recognized. If you've experienced how dignified silence has preserved your energy and maintained your standards more effectively than any argument could, share dignity preserved in the comments. I'd love to hear from those who've discovered this. In quiet strength, there's a counterintuitive truth that reveals itself when you step back and observe relationship dynamics with clarity. The moment you begin begging someone to see your value, you actually diminish that value in their eyes. This paradox plays out countless times in our interactions, yet we rarely recognize the pattern as it's happening. Think about it. When you desperately try to convince someone of your worth through lengthy explanations, emotional pleas, or repeated attempts to make them understand you, you're unintentionally sending a powerful subconscious message. I don't believe my value is self-evident. This revelation transforms how we approach relationships by illuminating a fundamental truth. Self-respect is demonstrated, not explained. It's shown through your boundaries, your silence, your willingness to walk away from disrespect, and your refusal to beg for recognition. These quiet actions speak volumes more about your value than any words possibly could. The moment you stop trying to convince others of your worth is often the moment they begin to recognize it naturally. Neville Goddard captured this principle perfectly when he taught that assumption hardens into fact. When you silently assume your worth, not from ego or arrogance, but from genuine self-knowledge, that assumption gradually solidifies into your experienced reality. Others begin to perceive the value you've already claimed internally. This mental shift doesn't require their permission or validation. It starts and ends with your own consciousness. The journey toward this embodied self-worth represents a profound inner transformation. It's the evolution from seeking external validation to generating internal certainty. From needing others to reflect your value back to you, to knowing it so completely that their reflection becomes secondary. This mindset revolution doesn't happen overnight, but each time you choose silence over explanation when your worth is questioned, you strengthen this muscle of self-sovereignty. Now here's where silence offers another extraordinary gift. It allows you to observe people's true nature without the fog of your emotional reactions obscuring your vision. When someone disrespects you and you immediately respond with defense or counterattack, you miss crucial information about who they really are and what they truly value. Your immediate reaction creates a smokescreen that prevents clear observation. In contrast, when you maintain composed silence, you create the space to witness what's actually happening beneath the surface. You notice patterns that were previously invisible. You see the triggers behind their behavior. You recognize their limitations without taking them personally. This clarity becomes invaluable in determining which relationships deserve your continued investment and which ones you might need to release. Goddard emphasized the importance of awareness as the foundation for conscious creation. Silent observation develops this awareness to see truth clearly, not the story you're telling yourself about a situation, not the interpretation that protects your ego, but the unfiltered reality of what's actually unfolding. This clear seeing becomes a superpower in navigating relationships with wisdom rather than reactivity. Behind the scenes of this witnessing consciousness is a profound shift in how you process difficult interactions. Instead of immediately jumping to conclusions or reactions, you create space to absorb the full picture. This pause allows your intuition to speak, your values to surface, and your discernment to sharpen. Let's explore what happens when you approach triggering situations with this observational mindset rather than your habitual reactions. The revelations that emerge might completely transform how you navigate challenging relationships. If you've noticed how your silence has revealed people's true colors in ways your words never could, share Truth Revealed in the comments. I'm fascinated to hear who else has discovered this hidden power of quiet observation. Marcus Aurelius offered us an invaluable perspective shift when he wrote, "When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come of it." This profound reframing invites us to step back from our immediate hurt and consider the broader context of someone's hurtful behavior. What were they hoping to gain? What insecurity might they be protecting? What past wounds might they be projecting? This mental pivot doesn't excuse harmful actions, but it does illuminate them, transforming your experience from purely emotional to deeply insightful. Understanding others' motivations brings a remarkable clarity that emotional reactivity always obscures. When you respond immediately to hurt with your own hurt, you miss the opportunity to see the fuller picture. The revelation waiting on the other side of this mindset shift is that most harmful behavior has very little to do with you personally and almost everything to do with the inner state of the person inflicting it. As Neville Goddard taught, everyone acts according to their current state of consciousness. The person who lashes out in anger, dismisses your feelings, or betrays your trust is simply manifesting their own inner landscape, their fears, their limitations, their unhealed wounds. Your silence in these moments gives you the sacred space to recognize these limitations without absorbing them as your own. This distinction is crucial. You can understand someone's behavior without taking responsibility for it. Behind the scenes of this psychological journey lies a profound decision point. Will you allow someone else's limited consciousness to determine your response, or will you maintain sovereignty over your own inner state? The Stoic chooses the latter, not from coldness, but from clarity about where true power resides. Now, let's explore one of the most revealing aspects of embracing silence in difficult relationships. Your composed silence makes manipulators profoundly uncomfortable, and for a very specific reason. They can't control what they can't provoke. Think about the typical manipulation dynamic. Someone pushes your buttons, triggers your insecurities, or crosses your boundaries specifically to elicit a predictable emotional reaction. When that reaction comes, it gives them a sense of control, validation, or power over your emotional state. But what happens when you break this pattern by responding with composed silence? The manipulator suddenly finds themselves in unfamiliar territory. Their usual tactics don't work. Their ability to predict and control your responses vanishes. This creates a psychological pattern interruption that often leads to revealing behavior, perhaps escalation, confusion, or even withdrawal. Whatever their response, it provides valuable information about their true intentions. Emotional reactions inevitably fuel toxic dynamics by creating the drama that manipulative people thrive on. Every time you take the bait and respond with anger, defensiveness, or lengthy explanations, you're essentially feeding the very dynamic you wish would end. Neville Goddard explained that your state of consciousness creates your reality. When you maintain silent strength in the face of provocation, you're creating an entirely new reality, one where manipulation simply loses its power. The transformation happens first within you, then ripples outward to recalibrate all your relationships. As you consistently refuse to engage with tactics designed to provoke you, you'll notice a natural filtering effect. Manipulative people either adapt to a healthier dynamic with you or gradually fade from your life. This evolution doesn't require confrontation or dramatic endings, just your consistent commitment to maintaining your inner peace. If you've noticed how your silence has completely disarmed someone who was trying to manipulate your emotions, share "manipulation disarmed" in the comments. I'm curious who else has witnessed this powerful shift in dynamic. One of the most profound gifts that silence offers us is the creation of space. Not just external space, but internal space between stimulus and response. In that seemingly small gap lies an entire universe of possibility. When someone provokes you and you pause before responding, or choose not to respond at all, you're creating a sacred interval where wisdom can emerge and grow. This internal spaciousness represents a fundamental shift from reactive living to conscious choosing. Most people surrender their power through immediate, unfiltered responses to life's provocations. Something triggers them, and they react instantly, often in ways they later regret. This reactive pattern creates a life where external circumstances constantly dictate your internal state. The revelation waiting on the other side of this habit is that your power lies precisely in that space between trigger and response, a space that silence naturally expands. As Neville Goddard taught, controlled attention determines experience. When you maintain silence in triggering situations, you're essentially exercising precise control over where you direct your mental energy. Instead of automatically pouring your attention into defense, explanation, or counterattack, you consciously choose where to place this powerful force. This mental discipline becomes particularly crucial when others are actively trying to seize control of your attention through provocation or drama. The inner transformation that happens in these moments of conscious silence reshapes your entire experience of challenging situations. What once felt like automatic reactions beyond your control becomes a series of deliberate choices that reflect your highest values. This journey from reactive to responsive living represents one of the most significant evolutions in personal sovereignty. Seneca captured another crucial aspect of Stoic wisdom when he said, "To win, you must begin with the end in mind." This insight reveals a profound question that most people never stop to ask themselves when engaged in conflict or challenging relationships. What does winning actually mean in this situation? Is it about being right, getting the last word, making the other person admit fault? Or might true victory look entirely different? Perhaps preserving your peace, maintaining your dignity, or protecting your energy? The Stoic warrior asks this essential question before engaging. What outcome would truly serve my highest good? Sometimes the answer involves thoughtful communication and resolution, but often, especially when dealing with those who aren't operating from emotional maturity, the highest victory comes through strategic silence, removing yourself from dynamics that don't serve your growth or peace. Neville Goddard taught a parallel principle when he emphasized beginning with the feeling of the end achieved. When you approach challenging interactions with a clear vision of the peace, dignity, and self-respect you wish to maintain, your responses naturally align with that vision. Strategic silence beautifully embodies this principle. It represents a choice to prioritize your long-term well-being over temporary emotional satisfaction. Behind the scenes of this mindset revolution is a profound shift from externally defined winning to internally defined sovereignty. You begin to recognize that true victory has nothing to do with changing another person's mind or behavior, and everything to do with maintaining your alignment with your highest self. Let's explore what happens when you approach triggering situations with this end-in-mind perspective, rather than getting caught in the immediate emotional pull to react. The decisions that emerge from this vantage point often look radically different from reactive patterns. If you've experienced how silence has given you the space to respond with wisdom rather than reaction, share "Space creates wisdom" in the comments. I'm curious who else has discovered this transformative power. One of the most remarkable revelations on this journey of Stoic silence is how it unveils everything without saying anything at all. This seemingly paradoxical truth transforms how you navigate relationships by providing unprecedented clarity about who's who in your life. When you consistently stop responding to provocation, drama, or disrespect, you begin to see with crystal clarity who truly values connection with you versus who simply enjoys your reaction. This natural sorting process happens without confrontation, without ultimatums, without dramatic declarations. Your silence creates a space where people essentially self-select based on their genuine intentions toward you. Those who value authentic connection will find ways to approach you with respect, even when communication has been challenging. Those who are primarily feeding off your emotional reactions will either escalate their attempts to provoke you or gradually fade from your life entirely. Neville Goddard explained this phenomenon through his teaching that consciousness sorts itself naturally. When you maintain a composed, centered consciousness rather than a reactive one, you create an energetic field that automatically attracts aligned connections while repelling misaligned ones. Your silence doesn't push people away. It simply allows relationships to reveal their true nature without the distortion of your explanations, justifications, or reactions. The transformation happens behind the scenes of your awareness as you begin to recognize patterns that were always there but remained hidden beneath layers of emotional engagement. Suddenly, you can distinguish between those who genuinely care about your well-being and those who primarily care about how you make them feel through your reactions to them. This clarity becomes invaluable in determining where to invest your precious energy moving forward. Now, here's a particularly revealing aspect of embracing silence. Notice who gets visibly frustrated or upset when they can't provoke a reaction from you. That's the truth revealed about your dynamic with them. When someone is accustomed to controlling your emotional state through provocation and suddenly finds that power gone, their response often tells you everything you need to know about their intentions. Some will escalate dramatically, trying increasingly extreme tactics to elicit your familiar reaction. Others might accuse you of being cold or uncaring for not engaging. Both responses reveal a dynamic that was based more on emotional manipulation than authentic connection. Sometimes silence creates more discomfort than even the most heated confrontation could, precisely because people can easily dismiss your words but find it nearly impossible to dismiss your absence. Your words can be argued with, twisted, or invalidated, but your silent withdrawal of energy creates a vacuum that speaks volumes about your boundaries and self-respect. As Goddard taught, what persists in consciousness must eventually objectify in experience. Your silence reveals the persistent patterns in relationships that might have remained hidden during years of reactive engagement. When you stop participating in familiar dynamics, you create the space to see clearly what was actually driving them all along. The journey into strategic silence isn't about shutting down communication entirely. It's about becoming extremely selective about where and how you invest your communicative energy. This discernment reveals which connections are worth nurturing and which ones have been draining your life force all along. If you've been surprised by how clearly your silence revealed someone's true intentions toward you, share Truth Unmasked in the comments. I'd love to hear about your experiences with this revealing aspect of Stoic silence. When you embrace the practice of strategic silence, something profound begins to happen in your relationships. You stop feeding illusions and playing emotional games that never served your highest good. This revelation often comes as a powerful awakening. All those explanations, justifications, and emotional reactions weren't just draining your energy. They were actually sustaining dynamics built on shaky foundations. Your words were inadvertently becoming the life support system for relationships that perhaps needed to transform or end naturally. In this newfound clarity, you begin to trust patterns over promises, actions over words, reality over potential. This mindset shift fundamentally transforms how you navigate relationships by anchoring you in what is rather than what could be or should be. You stop making decisions based on occasional moments of connection that spark hope and start making them based on consistent patterns that reveal truth. This evolution from wishful thinking to clear seeing marks a pivotal turning point in your personal sovereignty. Neville Goddard emphasized that repeated imaginal acts eventually solidify into physical reality. When you repeatedly imagine someone as more trustworthy, more respectful, or more aligned with your values than their actions demonstrate, you create a gulf between your perception and reality. Silence helps you bridge this gap by removing the distractions of empty words and hollow promises. Without the fog of your own explanations and hopes obscuring your vision, recurring patterns become impossible to ignore. This journey toward trusting behavioral patterns over verbal assurances doesn't happen overnight. It requires a willingness to see what's actually there rather than what you wish was there. Your silence creates the necessary space for this truth to emerge naturally, without forcing or fighting it. The revelation waiting on the other side of this shift is that clarity, even when uncomfortable, always serves your highest good better than comforting illusions. Now, let's address one of the most common misunderstandings about Stoic silence: the perception that it represents coldness or emotional detachment. Nothing could be further from the truth. Stoicism isn't cold, it's clear. It's not distant, it's discerning. It's not emotionless, it's emotionally disciplined. This distinction is crucial for understanding the true power of strategic silence. The Stoic who maintains composed silence in the face of provocation isn't lacking feeling. They're channeling those feelings with precision and purpose. They've simply mastered the art of responding rather than reacting, of choosing their expressions of emotion rather than being controlled by them. This emotional mastery represents one of the highest forms of self-sovereignty available to us. When someone who has previously hurt, disrespected, or manipulated you attempts to talk their way back into your life, the Stoic approach offers invaluable guidance. Observe before responding. Don't rush back into familiar patterns based on words alone. Give yourself the gift of space to witness whether their actions align with their promises before reinvesting your precious energy. As Neville Goddard taught, consciousness discriminates wisely when given the space to do so. Your silent discernment in these pivotal moments prevents repeated disappointments by ensuring your decisions are based on clear reality rather than hopeful projection. This doesn't mean permanently closing the door on relationships that matter to you. It means requiring consistent alignment between words and actions before fully reopening that door. If you've experienced the clarity that comes from trusting patterns over promises in your relationships, share "Patterns Reveal Truth" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you have discovered this transformative perspective. There's a counterintuitive truth that often gets overlooked in our validation-seeking culture. Not explaining yourself can actually be the highest form of confidence. This revelation transforms how we approach moments of misunderstanding or judgment from others. Think about it. When you feel truly secure in who you are, you don't feel compelled to convince others of your worth, justify your choices, or defend your boundaries. Your certainty about yourself becomes so unshakable that others' opinions, while perhaps noted, don't dictate your sense of self. The Stoic warrior seeks understanding within rather than constantly pursuing it from others. This internal orientation creates a foundation of peace that external circumstances can't easily disturb. Rather than chasing validation from those who may never fully see or appreciate you, You cultivate a deep relationship with your own values, intentions, and truth. This shift from external to internal reference point marks a profound evolution in personal sovereignty. As Neville Goddard explained, your self-concept ultimately determines your experience. When your self-concept is built on the need for others' understanding and approval, you'll constantly find yourself in situations where you feel misunderstood and disapproved of. But when your self-concept is anchored in your own clear knowing of who you are, external validation becomes unnecessary. Your confident silence in the face of misunderstanding reflects this secure self-concept. It says, "I don't need you to understand me to know my own worth." This journey toward internal validation represents one of the most significant transformations on the path of personal growth. Behind the scenes of this evolution is a fundamental decision to trust your own perception above the often limited or distorted perceptions of others. This doesn't mean closing yourself off from feedback or growth. It means filtering that input through your own discernment rather than automatically deferring to others' judgments. Marcus Aurelius offered profound wisdom when he wrote, "Don't waste what remains of your life speculating about neighbors unless with a view to mutual benefit." This insight invites us to consider how much precious life energy we spend trying to control how others perceive us. Every lengthy explanation, every defensive text message, every attempt to convince someone of your worth or goodness represents time and energy that could have been invested in what truly matters to you. When you find yourself crafting the perfect response to someone who has misunderstood you, pause and ask, is this truly a worthwhile investment of my limited life force? Will this explanation actually create meaningful change, or am I simply feeding a dynamic that will continue regardless of my words? This mindset shift doesn't mean never explaining yourself. It means becoming extremely selective about where and with whom you invest that energy. Neville Goddard taught the crucial practice of prioritizing inner states over external validation. When you maintain silence in the face of misunderstanding or judgment, you're essentially declaring that your inner peace matters more than others' perceptions. This choice conserves your precious energy for creating what truly matters in your life, rather than depleting it on battles that can't be won through words alone. The revelation waiting on the other side of this shift is how much more energy you suddenly have available for your authentic purpose when you're no longer pouring it into unnecessary explanations and defenses. This reclamation of your life force creates a newfound vitality that naturally expresses itself in your most meaningful pursuits. If you've experienced the freedom that comes from no longer feeling obligated to explain yourself to everyone who misunderstands you, share inner freedom found in the comments. I'd love to hear from those who've discovered this liberating perspective. There's a common misconception that often arises when you stop explaining yourself to others, the assumption that you're being arrogant, cold, or dismissive. But the truth reveals a very different reality. The person who doesn't feel compelled to justify their choices, defend their boundaries, or explain their worth isn't coming from a place of superiority. They're operating from a foundation of profound inner peace. This peace stems from a rare alignment between intentions and actions, between who you are and how you live. When your intentions are clean and your actions are aligned with your values, the need for explanation naturally diminishes. You become comfortable in the knowing that your truth doesn't require translation, especially to those who have already demonstrated an unwillingness to understand. This revelation transforms how you approach misunderstandings by liberating you from the exhausting cycle of trying to make yourself comprehensible to people who benefit from misinterpreting you. As Neville Goddard taught, being precedes manifestation. Who you are internally will inevitably express itself externally, regardless of how many words you use to describe it. Your silent integrity becomes a force that naturally manifests respect from those who are aligned with your values, while simultaneously creating distance from those who aren't. This natural sorting process happens without drama, without explanations, and without the energy drain of trying to convince others of your worth. Behind the scenes of this internal shift is a profound recognition. Your value isn't diminished by someone else's inability to see it. This realization frees you from the burden of constantly translating your worth into terms others can understand. Some people simply lack the emotional vocabulary to comprehend your depth, and that's not a reflection on you. Now, here's a truth that might initially feel uncomfortable, but ultimately brings profound liberation. Losing people who never truly saw you isn't actually a loss, it's alignment. When someone exits your life because you've stopped chasing, explaining, or compromising your peace to keep them comfortable, what you're experiencing isn't rejection, but recalibration. The relationship is simply finding its authentic level based on mutual respect rather than one-sided effort. What most people don't openly acknowledge is that genuine understanding often isn't even the goal in many interactions. What's frequently sought instead is control over perception, the ability to define the narrative, set the terms, and maintain a position of judgment. When you embrace silence and refuse to participate in this dynamic, you effectively remove yourself from a game that was designed for you to lose. Goddard illuminated this process through his teaching on revision, the principle that changing your perception doesn't just alter how you see reality, it actually transforms reality itself. Your silence in the face of misunderstanding or judgment essentially revises relationships to their authentic state. Without your constant effort to bridge gaps that others aren't helping to close, connections naturally settle into their true form, sometimes closer, sometimes more distant, but always more aligned with reality. The transformation that happens through this process isn't about pushing people away. It's about allowing relationships to find their natural equilibrium based on mutual respect rather than one-sided accommodation. This recalibration creates space for connections that don't require you to diminish yourself to maintain them. If you've noticed how your relationships have naturally shifted into greater authenticity since you stopped over-explaining yourself, share authentic alignment in the comments. I'd love to hear who else has experienced this powerful recalibration in their connections. There's a remarkable shift that occurs when you stop feeling the need to explain yourself to everyone around you. You naturally begin leading with energy rather than words. This energetic leadership creates a presence that speaks volumes without saying anything. Think about the people you most respect and admire. Chances are they don't constantly justify themselves or seek validation through explanation. Their energy precedes them, establishes boundaries without announcement, and communicates worth without declaration. What makes this revelation particularly transformative is how it recalibrates your relationships. Those who are genuinely meant to be in your life, the people who truly see and value you, will understand your silence without needing subtitles. They intuitively grasp your boundaries, respect your space, and honor your need for peace without requiring lengthy explanations or justifications. This natural understanding becomes a powerful filter that helps you identify your authentic connections. As Neville Goddard taught, consciousness invariably attracts its equivalent. When you embody silent authenticity rather than desperate explanation, you naturally attract people who operate at that same frequency. Your energy becomes a magnet for connections that don't require you to constantly prove your worth or defend your boundaries. This energetic alignment happens beneath the surface of conscious awareness, drawing together those who share similar values without the need for explicit discussion. The blueprint for this transformation lies in recognizing that your energy communicates far more powerfully than your words ever could. Long before you explain yourself, people have already felt your presence, interpreted your boundaries, and formed impressions based on the consciousness you embody. Your decision to embrace silence simply allows this natural process to unfold without interference. Now let's address a crucial distinction about Stoic silence that's often misunderstood. True Stoic silence isn't loud, desperate, or theatrical. It's not the dramatic silent treatment designed to punish or manipulate. Instead, it's calm, rooted, and unshakable. A quiet certainty about your worth and boundaries that requires no external validation. This distinction separates mature silence from passive-aggressive withdrawal and represents the difference between reaction and response. The hidden truth at the core of this practice is that you don't owe explanations for choosing peace or need to convince anyone of your boundaries' validity. Your decisions about your own life, energy, and well-being are inherently valid without requiring defense or justification. This revelation liberates you from the exhausting cycle of seeking permission for your own boundaries or apologizing for prioritizing your peace. Goddard emphasized that what you claim as true in consciousness must eventually manifest in experience. When you silently claim your worth as self-evident, not from ego but from genuine self-knowledge, you create a consciousness where others naturally begin to perceive and respect that worth. Your silent self-respect gradually manifests a reality where your value doesn't need constant declaration because it's simply understood. The journey into this embodied knowing represents one of the most profound evolutions available to us, moving from seeking external validation to generating internal certainty. This mindset revolution doesn't happen overnight, but each time you choose silence over unnecessary explanation, you strengthen this muscle of self-sovereignty. If you've experienced how your silent self-respect has naturally created a reality where others respect your boundaries without explanation, share "boundaries respected" in the comments. I'm curious who else has witnessed this powerful manifestation principle at work in their relationships. As we reach this point in our journey together, I hope you felt that shift inside, that quiet recognition of a power you've always possessed, but perhaps haven't fully embraced. The Stoic path isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about reclaiming the sovereignty that was always yours. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's a profound statement about your worth, your boundaries, and your peace. If this message resonated with you today, if you found yourself nodding along or reflecting on relationships where you've given your power away through over-explaining, I'd love for you to become part of our Stoic community. Subscribe to join us on this path of inner strength and wisdom, where we explore not just ancient philosophy, but practical ways to embody these timeless truths in our modern lives. The transformation we've discussed today doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice, a continuous choice to value your peace over temporary emotional satisfaction. And I'd be honored to walk alongside you on this journey. If this message found you exactly when you needed it, leave a comment saying, "Silence is my superpower." I read every comment and would love to hear which part of this resonated most deeply with you. If you found value in what we've shared today, that simple like button helps others discover this message too, and perhaps find it at exactly the moment they need it most, just as you did. I've created a video right here that explores how to maintain this Stoic strength when dealing with particularly difficult people, those who seem determined to pull you back into old patterns. Click and continue this journey with me. There, as we deepen our practice of dignified silence in even the most challenging relationships, remember, your silence isn't just strength, it's freedom. The freedom to choose your peace over unnecessary drama. The freedom to value yourself without external validation. The freedom to let your absence speak louder than any words ever could.